Someone is influencing you right now, not with force, not with threats, with something far more invisible and far more powerful. The truth that most people will never face is this: the greatest manipulation you will ever experience is one you will never recognize as manipulation at all. It will feel like a decision you made freely. It will feel like your own desire, your own thought, your own conclusion. And that is exactly how it was designed to feel. We live in a world that presents itself as open, transparent, and rational. We believe we choose what we want, love who we love, and think what we think. But beneath that comfortable surface, beneath the illusion of free will, there are forces shaping the architecture of your choices before you even become aware of them. What you are about to understand is not a theory, it is a mechanism, one that has been used for centuries, documented by philosophers, feared by kings, and wielded, consciously or unconsciously, by those who understand how the human mind actually works. The question is no longer whether manipulation exists. The question is, are you the one being shaped, or the one doing the shaping? Most people move through life as though reality is simply what it appears to be. They wake up, react to their environment, make choices that feel organic, and assume the world is responding to them honestly. But consider this: every great power structure in human history, every empire, every religion, every political movement was built not on armies alone, but on the mastery of perception. Those who understood manipulation understood one fundamental truth about human nature. People do not respond primarily to reality. They respond to the story they have been given about reality. Shape the story, and you shape the person. Shape enough people, and you shape civilizations. This is not cynicism. This is psychology. The science of how meaning is constructed, how beliefs are formed, how emotions are anchored, how trust is built and then leveraged, reveals a world far more complex than the one we think we inhabit. The ordinary person walks through life assuming that what they see is what is real. But the philosopher, the psychologist, the strategist, they know that between reality and perception, there is a vast and exploitable gap. And in that gap, everything is negotiable. The forces that shape your desires were mostly installed without your knowledge, through your upbringing, your culture, your relationships, and your fears. Manipulation does not begin in a stranger's words. It begins in the architecture of your own mind, built long before you had the awareness to question it. Here is the first thing you must understand. Manipulation is not primarily about lying. The most sophisticated forms of influence never require a single false word. They work by selectively framing truth, by emphasizing what triggers an emotional response while quietly concealing what might produce a rational one. Consider how you make decisions. You believe you gather information, weigh options, and choose rationally. But neuroscience tells a different story. Decisions are made by the emotional brain first. The rational mind arrives afterward, not to choose but to justify what the emotion has already selected. You don't decide and then feel. You feel and then decide, and then invent a reason that makes the decision seem logical. This is the fundamental leverage point of all manipulation. Bypass the rational mind entirely and speak directly to the emotional one. This is why fear is the oldest political tool, why desire is the engine of every advertisement, why belonging and rejection are among the most powerful forces in human behavior. These are not accidents of culture. They are deliberate activations of the oldest, deepest programming in the human nervous system. When someone makes you feel unsafe, they are not informing you. They are controlling you. When someone makes you feel special, chosen, understood, examine carefully what they are about to ask of you in return. Reality does not simply arrive in your mind. It is filtered, framed, and delivered, and someone, somewhere, is always deciding how. In the early 16th century, a Florentine diplomat named Niccolò Machiavelli sat in exile, stripped of his position, and wrote what would become one of the most feared and misunderstood texts in human history, The Prince. The world condemned it as a manual for tyrants. But those who read it carefully discovered something different, a mercilessly honest dissection of how power actually functions beneath the masks of virtue and morality that rulers wear for public consumption. Machiavelli did not invent manipulation. He simply refused to pretend it didn't exist. He wrote, "Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions." This is not nihilism. This is observation. Machiavelli was documenting what he had watched across courts, wars, and alliances, that people's immediate emotional needs make them vulnerable. The desire for security, the hunger for certainty, the fear of loss, the need to belong to something greater than themselves. He understood that those who control the framing of a situation, who define what is safe and what is dangerous, who is a friend and who is an enemy, what is noble and what is shameful, effectively control the behavior of everyone within that frame. Machiavelli's real gift to us is not a recipe for domination. It is a mirror, a brutally clear reflection of the psychological architecture that makes human beings governable. And once you see that architecture from the outside, you can never again be governed by it unknowingly. To understand manipulation at its deepest level, you must understand how the human mind processes reality. The subconscious mind is not a lesser version of consciousness. It is the primary operating system. It processes 11 million bits of information per second, while your conscious awareness handles only about 40. 95% of your behavior, your reactions, and your decisions emerge from patterns running below your awareness. These patterns were written early. In childhood, through repetition and emotional intensity, your nervous system learned what is safe and what is dangerous, what love looks like, what authority sounds like, what deserving feels like. These imprints became lenses, invisible filters through which all future experience is interpreted. A skilled manipulator does not need to break into your mind. They simply learn to speak its existing language. They observe your fears and mirror them back as protection. They identify your deepest desires and position themselves as the only path to fulfillment. They locate your wounds, the need for validation, the terror of abandonment, the hunger for recognition, and they apply pressure precisely there. Emotional manipulation always targets identity, because identity is not fixed. It is a story. And stories can be rewritten by whoever controls the narrative with enough consistency and emotional force. This is why the most effective manipulation never feels hostile. It feels like home. It speaks the language of your deepest self, because it has studied that self carefully and learned to imitate it with precision. The cage that holds you longest is the one built from your own beliefs. And now, here is the revelation that changes everything. The most dangerous manipulation is not performed by an enemy. It is performed by systems and by yourself. Every social system you have ever participated in has required your manipulation in some form. Not through obvious force, but through the slow, invisible shaping of what you believe is normal, acceptable, desirable, and real. Culture manipulates. Language manipulates. The stories told about who deserves success and who deserves suffering. These are forms of manipulation so pervasive they become invisible, absorbed as truth rather than recognized as narrative. And then there is self-manipulation, the most profound of all. The stories you tell yourself about your limitations, the beliefs you have inherited about your worth, the identity you perform to be accepted rather than the one you would choose freely. You have been taught to fear certain thoughts, desire certain outcomes, and define yourself in ways that serve systems larger than your own flourishing. This is manipulation without a manipulator, a structure so deeply embedded that it generates its own continuity through the minds of those it shapes. The hidden truth at the center of all of this is not that the world is populated by predators, though some certainly exist. The deeper truth is that every mind is constantly being written upon by culture, by trauma, by repetition, by those it loves and fears. And the one who understands this process can begin for the first time to choose what gets written. Awareness is not just knowledge. Awareness is the only form of freedom that cannot be taken from you. So what does one do with this knowledge? The first practice is the most difficult. Observe before you react. In the space between a stimulus and your response, there exists a moment, brief, easily missed, where choice is genuinely possible. Most people never find that moment because they have been trained to respond automatically. Developing the discipline to pause is developing the capacity for genuine freedom. The second practice is to study your emotional triggers with curiosity rather than shame. Every intense emotional reaction is a map. It points directly to a belief, a wound, or an identity pattern that has become a leverage point. What makes you feel threatened, desperate, or invisible? What do you hunger for so deeply that you would compromise your judgment to obtain it? These are the doors through which manipulation enters, and awareness closes them. Third, examine the narratives you have accepted about yourself and the world without question. Who told you that you were too much or not enough? Who defined success in a way that conveniently required your submission? Question the authorship of the stories you live by. Many of them were written by someone else, for someone else's benefit. Fourth, choose your information environment deliberately. The mind absorbs what it is, repeatedly exposed to. What enters your awareness shapes what feels possible, what feels normal, and what feels true. This is not metaphysics. It is neuroscience. The architect of your attention is the architect of your reality. You cannot control every force that attempts to shape you, but you can become aware of them. And awareness, as Machiavelli understood, is the beginning of all real power. In the end, the deepest truth about manipulation is not about other people. It is about the nature of the human mind itself. This extraordinary, fragile, magnificent instrument that constructs reality from raw experience, that writes meaning onto a world that offers none on its own. To understand manipulation is to understand consciousness. It is to see that what you call your beliefs, your desires, your identity, these are not discoveries. They are constructions, built from the materials that life, chance, and other people have placed within your reach. The one who sees this is not diminished by it. They are liberated by it. Because if your reality is constructed, then it can be reconstructed. If your beliefs were written, they can be rewritten. If your identity was shaped by forces you did not choose, you can, with awareness, with discipline, with ruthless honesty about what is truly yours and what was given to you, begin to choose differently. The world does not happen to the conscious mind. The conscious mind happens to the world. What you perceive as reality is a collaboration between the universe and the lens through which you observe it. Change the lens, and everything changes.